This is a little tutorial on post-processing the Dwarf2 stacked image file. Now the Dwarf2 micro SD card will have folders named dwarf_raw_ and the date time for every stacked image set you have. And the latest software release makes all the individual sub-exposures FITS files, but I'm going to ignore those and just concentrate on the stack.png file. But before I open that, I wanted to bring your attention to the shotinfo.json file because that gives you some shot information in case you forget what you did. So this means exposure 8 seconds for each sub-exposure, gain of 40. This reminds you of what target you took. And this down here tells you how many shots or sub-exposures were actually stacked. So what I usually do is take this stack.png, I usually copy it to a different folder, and I rename it, and then I drag it into my image processing program, which in my case is going to be Affinity Photo. I just have version 1. If you have version 2, the menus may look a little different, but it'll be about the same. The first thing I usually do is, you can see the stacked image here. I'm going to crop it just to cut out this the fact that it's the various sub-exposure frames are being rotated. This will also make the processing go a little bit faster. And now I'm going to process this image without any plugins, without any purchased plugins. Then I'm going to come back and redo it with some plugins so you can see the difference. So the first thing is, now this is already stacked and stretched. So really the only thing left is to bring out some contrast. So I usually like to go right down the curves. And this brings up this little histogram. And with Affinity Photo, you have this little picker button that I like. And what this means is you could mouse, press, hold, and drag the mouse up or down to change the analogous point on this curve. So I'm going to choose something about here with some of the faint nebulosity, and I'm going to drag it up a little bit. So this will make everything brighter around that intensity level, and the farther away it changes less. And then I'm going to pick someplace else in the diagram or in the image that's fairly dark. I'm going to press and hold and drag that down. And so now you can just see by looking at the image, by adjusting this, that you are increasing the contrast. So the stuff that was a little bit light got much lighter, and the stuff that's a little bit dark got much darker. And also you're kind of blowing the core out in here because all these brighter areas here are also getting brighter. So I'm going to actually click about here on this diagram and just kind of drag that down a little bit. So that will make the core not get quite so brighter. If you drag that too much, you kind of get some artifacts with how it looks. So kind of something like this, you can kind of control, kind of minimize how much that, you can play around with this to kind of see what you think looks good. So I'm going to leave it there and hit merge. And you can do this a couple times. I'm going to click again. Again, click picker, kind of same kind of thing. Pick somewhere that's some nebulosity I want to bring up a little bit. And then someplace else in the diagram I want to bring down. And maybe someplace else you want to bring down. So this, it did increase the contrast, so you can, some of these color changes or intensity levels are a bit more dramatic now. And as far as filtering noise, without a fancy purchase plugin, you're a little limited. You can click on filters and noise and denoise, and you can play around with this a little bit. And basically all this is going to do is kind of wherever you have some graininess, you can play with these sliders. It'll kind of make it a little fuzzier. And I don't usually use this that much, but this, it helped a little bit. So this is kind of some quick and dirty things you can do with, without purchasing any extra plugins. You can go into vibrance is another easy one to change the stuff. You can crank up the vibrance and the saturation a little bit just to maybe bring out some of these colors a little bit more. Okay, so this is an example of doing it kind of without any extra plugins. You can kind of see what you end up with. Now I'm going to redo it. Of course, then when you're all done, you can click File, Save As, and also click, and that'll save it in the Affinity Photo proprietary format, which means you could open it up later on and pick up right where you left off and continue editing. But to get the end result file, usually a JPEG, you want to save somewhere. You would then do File and Export, and then you could choose your JPEG setting and then whatever quality level you want. And I'm just going to leave this for now. And now we're going to redo the workflow the way I normally do it with the Dwarf2 with some couple extra steps. So I'm going to go back into crop, and we'll get rid of all of this field rotation part of the image, just like we did before. Okay, once you have apply that, so I have a little bit smaller image. Now I'm going to go play around with these levels, and I'm going to actually do a few steps here. I'm going to name this first level original, and I'm going to do a Control-C and a Control-V to make a copy of it. And I'm going to call this one No Stars. And then I'm going to make sure I have this No Stars level selected. And this is then I'm going to go to Filters and Plugins, and these are purchased plugins. These actually cost money. So I'm going to go in this RC-Astro starXterminator. And this will take about a minute. And what it's going to do is run this neural networks algorithm, and it will figure out where the stars are, and it will extrapolate and estimate what it thinks are behind the stars or beneath the stars. Once the stars are removed, it will fill in that area with whatever nebulosity it thinks should be there. And so we'll let this run. The interface for keeping track of how much time is left isn't all that good. Sometimes you just have to wait until that little not responding rectangle goes away. So not worried about that. So probably another 15-20 seconds and it will finish this step. And we'll end up with a version of this with the stars removed. And then we'll do some subsequent steps to have another layer with only the stars. Okay, so here's the layer with no stars. And now I'm going to select this top layer and do this one little trick here where you can take a difference between the original and the one with no stars, and the difference shows you just the stars. So now I'm going to flatten the document and call this layer only stars. And then I'm going to make a copy of that with Control C. I'm going to go back in my history to just before I flatten the document. So now I have the no stars layer. I have this now selected. And I'm going to do Control V and paste in the only stars. So now I have an only stars layer and a no stars layer. And now I'm going to select this little view option to screen. And this means I can show the only stars and the no stars at the same time if I want on the screen. And so this basically, we got right back to where we started from. This will look just like, I have the original layer turned off, but if I were to turn that on and turn these off, it would, this looks the same as if I have these two turned on. But what we now can do is we can work on these two layers separately. And this allows us to do things like do all this work to bring out the nebulosity, but we don't have a side effect of making the stars all brighter and fatter. So I'm going to go to select the no stars layer. I'm going to temporarily turn off the only stars. And now I'm going to do some operations in here. And the first thing I'm going to do is it's a very noisy image. And when I run the curves adjustments, it's going to make it even more noisy. So I'm going to start off with one of these, with another purchase filter. I'm going to plugins on this Topaz Lab Denoise. And this is another program that uses these neural networks or machine learning to clean the image up. And it has various options here. You can play around with the clear, low light, severe, noise, raw, standard, and you just have to experiment for whatever target to find one that works well. But on the left you see is the before, and on the right is the after. So you can play around with to see like how much sharpening you want. So I'm going to choose this and hit apply. So what this is going to do is I'm going to start with a more cleaned up image for my subsequent adjustments. Now I'm going to go back to the adjustments tab, and then I'm going to go down to curves. And this is the same thing I did in that first tutorial where I increased the contrast. But now I'm starting with a much cleaner image. But I'm going to do the same conceptual thing. I'm clicking picker. I'm going to pick something in here that has some nebulosity I want to intensify, and then somewhere else on the screen I want to make darker. And you can and you can do the same tricks where you can make it so the core is not brought out quite so much. I'll click merge, and as before we can do this a couple times to kind of fine tune it. I'm clicking picker, pick something over here that I want to make a little brighter. Somewhere else in the image I want to make it a little darker. And I can lower this a little bit. So here I have my curve where I'm kind of controlling how things are looking. Hit merge. And I could go into the vibrance like we did before. A lot of these steps are the same whether or not you use these fancy plugins. I could kind of bring out some colors a little bit more. And when I applied the curves, it did introduce some noise. So I could run it back through the this denoise again. But before I do that, I'm going to look at the layers one more time and turn on the stars. I might do this all in one swoop. I might run it through. I might have both layers turned on and run it through the this Antinoise one more time. Okay, it looks like it only will run it through whatever layer you've turned on. So you have to do it layer by layer. So notice when I hit high here for the enhanced sharpness, I think that, it didn't really look like that. It was too much. So you have to be careful with these things. You don't just overdo it. So I'm going to do low. And that just made it not quite so, not abnormally sharp. Okay, because that Topaz Antinoise only applied to whatever layer you have selected, I'm going to now select the only stars, and I'm going to do this separately for this. Filters, plugins, Topaz Labs, and this is the purchased plugin. There's a couple steps to install these plugins, but I can't quite remember what they are, so I'm not going to cover that here. And you can play around with these settings. Sometimes it makes these stars a little funny looking if you, so you have to choose whatever you think is appropriate. So now my stars are a little bit tighter. Then I can bring back in the nebulosity and see what it looks like together. And I could do one more levels adjustment. Maybe there's a little bit of room here. We could play around with the levels just to remove some of this stuff from the background. So I'm going to move the black just over a smidge, not a lot, just to make it a little bit darker. Layers and show them both. Okay, so this will be what I'm going to call my done image. And this is a little better mainly because of this Topaz Antinoise. It does a much better job of kind of smoothing up the image. And so a lot of these people who produce these really nice post-process images, they're using something like Topaz Antinoise. Some people are using PixInsight, and that RC-Astro suite of plugins has something similar, and actually they claim it's better than that Topaz Antinoise because it's been trained for astrophotography. The Topaz Antinoise is a general photography antinoise, so it's not necessarily trained just for astrophotography. It's kind of trained for just photographs in general, but it is less expensive, and you can use it with Affinity Photo. The RC-Astro Antinoise plugin, I think, is only for PixInsight. So anyway, so here at this point, you could do a save as for the Affinity Photo proprietary format, so you could load it back in and continue to edit it later on. Or if you're happy with this version, you can click File Export and make sure JPEG selected, and then choose your quality setting for however big you want your resulting file to be. I guess I'll go ahead and save this. And I want to call this maybe demo for this tutorial. Okay, so that's all, and I will let the people on Facebook know that this is ready so they can go look at it.